And then the other thing I've noticed is also Shroud has a new game, apparently. Apparently, Shroud and TARIK, I think, are developing a new game as a shooter. Okay. And it looks like
When
Borderlands.
I booted up Spectre Divide for the first time, I fully expected to play yet another team-based competitive shooter that would
looks like
probably
Borderlands,
be fine,
sort
but
of.
likely wouldn't elevate above that. After all, the teaser trailer provided no other information other than Spectre being a mashup of Valorant and CSGO. But I am so glad to be wrong and to be incredibly overwhelmed by the novelty Spectre Divide brings. The first thing that stood out to me was the art style. Cell shading in FPS games is definitely not something you see every day, and some may argue it could be distracting, but the shadowing and details you can see in the world are actually very clean and bright, so you don't get overwhelmed.
It does feel kind of like Valorant, and the way it looks.
I will say the only downside to the visuals was the fact that sometimes the orange outlines on your enemies were too slight and you'd be unable to determine if who you were looking at is, in fact, your enemy. But the fun I had in matches greatly outweighed that visual hiccup, one that I'm sure can be addressed before launch.
Yeah, it's pretty alpha, right? Or alpha? Beta?
But let's back up. Spectre Divide is a 3v3 tactical shooter that utilizes a mechanic called duality, where you control two characters in matches. Technically, these two characters are both you, just split into two bodies. To further solidify the point that these are your two bodies, you're actually able to fully customize both yourself and your Spectre in the menu.
Wait, that's cool. You have two characters you're customizing?
In a genre that has Valorant or Overwatch, where you can traditionally have these set characters with set abilities that you recognize. Instead, you have yourself and your split body that you're able to really make your own. But Spectre Divide not only encourages you to be creative with your character customization, but also your gameplay too. You're equipped with a puck that allows you to relocate your Spectre to any position, and then swap to that body. So this can be used to get up to higher points, quickly reposition through a gate, or even live to see another day.
Splinter away!
Your Spectre can also alert you to any enemies approaching that specific body. If I left my Spectre on point B and I had been guarding point A, I'd be alerted if any enemies were nearing point B based on where my Spectre is. This allows your Spectre to be even more of a useful tool in each match.
Oh wow.
If your Spectre dies, you're still able to use your remaining body to see the game through. So the Spectre gives you a second chance if you're smart with placement. When I ran through my first few rounds of a match, I was surprised that learning to manage a second body was not as difficult or daunting as I expected during the tutorial.
This carrier was killed.
It takes a solid minute to figure out how to position yourself and your Spectre and how to best utilize your two bodies in a fight. But the learning curve was actually incredibly shallow.
Okay,
I got about
really
4
cool.
hours of gameplay in, and during that time,
I can imagine people
tricks
tricking somebody,
to really
like,
boost my Spectre
literally
mechanics,
just tricking
but
somebody. Throw in like a clone decoy when they shoot them and then
down for managing
trade
your
them.
Spectre was pretty quick.
Right? Is that a strategy? Is that Valor, or am I just sounding dumb
While
right
Spectres
now? Like,
themselves
trading
don't
yourself
have
to
any
yourself?
unique abilities, you're given options for different sets of tech with sponsors.
Okay.
Sponsors provide you
Loadouts?
and your Spectre with equipment that benefits your team with different abilities and gear. Think of the sponsors as your different classes in an FPS.
The more I look at the art style, the more I
with
dig
different
it.
kits that vary from
looks
assault-based
pretty good.
abilities to healing support ability.
Okay.
Each
that's
set
pretty
of
cool.
sponsors are created with duality in mind, so you're able to further utilize your Spectre while activating your abilities. For example, when I used the Pinnacle sponsor, using the Adrenalink stim would heal the body I was currently in. But if I swapped to my Spectre, I'd be able to gain enhanced movement and vision for the duration of the stim.
Adrenalink activated.
This really encourages unique gameplay from players, and during my hands-on time, it kept me on my toes throughout each round. Trying to strategize the best ways to flank enemies or utilize my Spectre for intel was half the fun. I honestly found myself immediately taken by this concept, and after each match, I'd want to queue back in and try a different strategy. The actual matches themselves are pretty self-explanatory. You're tasked with either defending or assaulting different bomb sites, and
Having that extra body you can just swap to and switch mid-game, it definitely adds a whole new element to the FPS, which I think is going to be very refreshing. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm ready to play this already.
the first to 8 wins takes the victory. There's
Dang,
a
I wish I
buy
got to
period in
play
the
the
first
beta.
few
That'd
minutes
be
of each
cool.
round where you determine what weapons and abilities you want to equip. Unlike Valorant or CSGO, when you buy weapons, you don't just buy individual weapons for each character. The weapons come in sets of 2 that split between you and your Spectre. So when I bought the first weapon set in Tier 2, I received the Buzzsaw for myself and the Harp Sniper for my Spectre. If either you or your Spectre dies but one of you survives the round, you are able to simply buy back the single weapon you're missing in the kit for a discounted price. On that note, the weapons in Spectre Divide aren't particularly unique. They're weapons I've seen before in most FPS rosters with your typical burst rifles, SMGs, assault rifles, and super-powered operator sniper rifle.
Yeah, I mean,
but
there's
it's
only
the way
so
the
much
weapons
to
work
do with
that
guns,
was the more
right?
creative angle.
They're still trying to make it a
Usually, in
legitimate
tactical shooters, your aim
shooter,
becomes less
competitive
accurate
shooter.
as you move, and you're encouraged to walk slowly or even crouch when pulling the trigger. It's quite the opposite in Spectre Divide. As long as you're ADSing, you're able to shoot on the move with crosshair accuracy.
Doc Recall Hyperdome here.
You can still hip fire, but the best way to ensure your accuracy is maxed is by ADSing a majority of the time. Considering that developer Mountaintop Studios is comprised of developers from Valorant, Apex Legends, Destiny, and other FPS projects, these elements all make sense for Spectre Divide's base mechanics. A lot of casual players feel isolated from the fact that you're not able to move at your max speed and accurately shoot in tactical shooters.
Yep. Okay, so you can move, you can
But
spray
now
and
you're
pray
able
now.
to
This is
move
great
around
for
however
people
you
that like
want
to
and
spray and pray
maintain
and
that
walk
accuracy.
and walk
The
and
competitive
shoot.
nature of Spectre Divide works without the added need to be strategic in your starter movement because of the required management of you and your Spectre. Mountaintop's ability to balance these mechanics is genuinely intelligent. The barrier to entry is a non-issue with the concept of duality being easily comprehended. However, the skill gap between comprehension and mastering duality is deep enough that players can spend hours and hours in the game and still find new ways to utilize this mechanic in unique ways each match.
I'm ready.
For the first time in a really
is
long
cool.
time, I'm so very excited for an all-new
Yeah, this is
competitive
exciting.
FPS. Spectre Divide will
This
be
game
free to
looks
play with
really
Spectre
good.
and weapon cosmetics as the only purchasables and no pay-to-win mechanics. For more news on Spectre Divide,
It makes a lot of sense that the people that actually love playing FPS and know about FPS